This is a quick run through of how I set up my X100 bodies. In this case, the X100F, very similar to how I set up my X100S, and very similar to how I set up all my Fujifilm bodies, as you can imagine. Now, the speed will be the speed that it is. We'll just go through it. You might need to pause, stop, you might need to just skip a bunch, whatever. But let's just check it out. Plus, if I ever lose my marbles, which is very possible, it will help me remember. First menu, image size. Now, if I'm just shooting casually, you know, nothing pro, which this camera can be useful, I'll go for image size large, image quality fine, maybe something really extra special, fine and raw, and of course if I'm shooting professionally, raw. So let's just switch that back into fine. Then if I'm shooting in raw, I'm just going to use lossless compress, no big difference. My personal preference as a starting point, Pro Neg high in the film simulation, but as you'll see shortly, I use a film bracket, grain effect off, dynamic range auto, white balance auto, highlight tone, I drop that back by 1. Might start playing with dropping it back by 2, maybe. Shadow tone, I leave it at 0. I don't drop it down. I like a little bit of detail in the shadows, frankly, and if I need to, I can drop the exposure compensator, and that does what I need it to do, even though, of course, you know, that's scientifically not necessarily a way of adjusting shadow tone on its own. Right, color +2, sharpness +2. You can see you can go right up to +4, right down to -3. Noise reduction, right down to -3. I don't particularly check out the science between all that, but it seems to work out fine for me, to be honest. Long exposure, noise reduction on. Color space as is. Let's go down to the focus area. So I tend to use a larger square for the most points because I find it's a little bit faster, but if I really need to hone in, of course I'll just use the front dial and go to a smaller one. And oftentimes I shoot with it around the middle, but now we've got that cool joystick that allows us to select anywhere we want and to go back into the center, so that's absolutely fine. I'm kind of old school, so single point is my thing. I'm going to start playing with zone for street photography because this camera is really well set up for that, but I'm still in my old stuck in the mud ways of single point. I like to see my AF points, and just for the sake of it, I'm still using all 325 points. I find it flicks through the AF points fast enough for my purposes, so I'm happy with that. Pre-AF off, AF illuminate off. I don't want to be notifying somebody that I'm focusing somewhere. I'm messing with this face on eye auto. Sometimes I'll switch it off in street stuff because it can be a bit of a pain. AF, MF off. I don't tend to use manual focus with this camera, but if I do, I'll have peak, and actually I'll have it in white. Focus check off, that's off. Instant AF, AFS. Now, of course, if I'm going to shoot something else like moving subjects, video or something, piece to camera even, I'll go to AFC. Depth of field scale there. Release focus is always on focus there. AF corrected on. Self timer, well, that's very rarely used in my case, so that's currently off. Otherwise I'd just choose 10 seconds or whatever. Interval timer, still not happy with that because it's just too much hard work afterwards, but you can see it there if you need to. It's pretty flexible in that regard. Now, this is my baby film simulation bracket. I'm currently playing with Pro Neg high in 1, Astia soft, which actually I do get drawn to, I think, because of the warm nature of it. That's in 2, and Acros red. I do want to start playing a bit more with the other Acros filters. Acros red works very nicely for me. Shutter type, I'm using both at the moment. ISO, well, this is actually set down a little bit from when I had to attempt to do a large group shot. 3200 was still a bit of a push, but I'm often just going to the extremes with 12800. You know, conversion lens. We do have that conversion lens, actually, the wide one, and it is pretty cool. And I've got a shortcut button ready to flick into that if I need to. It's currently off because I haven't been using it much this week, so that's that there. ND filter is a big deal about this camera, and actually I didn't mention it in my Stillworthy video, but ND filter on this camera is a sweet, sweet, sweet addition, and I'm sorry I didn't mention it before. I don't think I mentioned the leaf shutter either. Oh man, I'm going to get some comments about that. But you know the specs, you know what it can do. Flash function setting. Now, I was going to play with the fill flash on this, but I couldn't get on with it. And when I had to do the big group shot, the flash was no use. Now, I could have added flashes off camera, which would have been really cool, but I didn't know I was going to be taking the big group shot and had to be in the big group shot, which hasn't been a problem before, so I didn't have my flashes full stop. So anyway, that's a cool thing with this camera. With the leaf shutter, you can do just that. So you do have to switch the built-in flash to on, as well as have the sound and flash setting on. So bear that in mind. Let's move on to the movie mode. Now, 1080 60 frames per second. I'll leave it at the highest. Now, you can't get that while shooting in the app as I am right now, because the lowest setting is 720p. And as somebody commented on my video about the Fujifilm camera app, making me, happy finally, because it can do this shoot in 1080p with my T3, that's possibly because that's the lowest setting the T3 can do, whereas this X100F, yeah, is doing the 720p, and so it'll just revert to the lowest, and yeah, it's a bit of a pain in the neck. So yeah, I was hoping it would have done 1080p, because then that would have given that extra bit of functionality to this X100F. When I've got our mic in, I'll adjust the mic there as well. Right, so the user settings, fairly simple stuff. Sound and flash is only set on because I was messing with the flash for a bit. As far as sounds go, I like all my sounds to be off. Obviously, playback volume, that can be up. But as I say, I'm not shooting that much video with this thing. Screen setup is as it is. Pause on that if you need to. These are just my personal preferences, as everything is really just a personal preference. I like the focus lever, or people call it the joystick, so I've got that there. Function modes, front one, auto exposure. That one gives you the conversion lens option, so it's quick to set. That's back to auto exposure. Preview mode, of course. So if I'm going to use a flash and I'm going to change it into manual, etc., I can still see what's on the screen before firing off the flash. Wi-Fi on the bottom. Wi-Fi is, as with most Fuji cameras, not always the quickest to connect, frankly. Sometimes you need to jump into airplane mode and do it that way. And then we've got focus check with that wheel. Just to mention, the exposure compensator dial, which I mentioned in the other video, is frankly a little bit awkward because I keep knocking it. I set it to C, and then I use the front dial to go through the range of plus and minus 5. So I'm quite happy with that. Now, as you can see, I've got my ISO dial set there, set to auto and command, focus ring clockwise, control ring setting to the digital tele conversion setting there. Auto power off, high performance, because I figure why not. I don't have a big problem with the batteries. Frame numbers, this stuff's kind of boring. Copyright info, you set what you want. Wireless settings, geotagging, all this bit's boring. And that's frankly the quick run through. On the top of the camera, which I'm afraid you can't see because I can't zoom in or anything, but I've just got them currently set to auto ISO, unless I really need to change it. And The other one is the auto shutter speed. Again, unless I really need to change it. And then I'm going to be rocking back and forth with the aperture. So basically aperture priority mode. As I said, the C's there, and there's nothing else you can really configure, I think. With the X100F, you're good to go then. It's pretty simple to get through the menus if you've never done it before. I appreciate if you want to copy some of these settings, it's there to copy. There's no big secrets. In fact, it's not even that amazingly complicated. But remember, when you tweak the image quality settings, these are down, even more down to personal preference, and you'll find that if you're going to shoot JPEGs, you really can have a really fun time playing around, choosing, tweaking, getting your feel on it, and then setting custom settings so you can change it depending on the situation. There's a good amount of flexibility with this, and of course you can go into the Q mode and select your custom settings in there. You get the point. If it's useful, cool. If not, great. There'll be more cool or even cooler stuff, or actually cool stuff coming up very soon. Stay subscribed. I'll see you in the comments below if need be. Take it easy.